Pardon me while I do the boring stuff. Got the oil change. You got to maintain the Sienna, and they have the brand new Sienna, and I'm interested because they're doing something that I thought they should have done a long time ago. They made it more SUV looking. It's kind of hard to distinguish the Sienna from the what do they call that? The Highlander in many ways. So they made it look a lot like the other cars. A little more exciting bodywork. I mean, it's just bodywork. But it looks like it's more roomy inside and nice. And everything you want in a minivan. It's got the sliding doors. But you get the all-wheel drive version of it. And what's the difference between it and an SUV? I know a lot of people won't buy a minivan because of the image or whatever. But I tell you, it's like the best value in a car, really, especially when you have kids. And face it, having a minivan doesn't age you or put you in a stereotype. It's just the best for best for what you need it for. All right. What I need to write down. Where I'm at. And let's see, repairs. Rotate tires and wind shield. I have to get gas. I figured out how to reverse that. So now, let's drive. I'm told that there's a hack that I can do. It'll generate more views for my channel, and that is to create a poll. And I'm trying to figure it out. The poll I'd like to create is, do you think this country is heading for civil war? Let me flip this so we can see something more interesting than my ugly mug. Oops. I don't know why that decided to turn on. I think maybe I didn't get it started. Oh yeah, and I got my coffee. I'm gonna go back via what's the name of this road? It's now called J.P. Cookingham Drive. So we're not taking the highway. We're taking a beautiful country route, and we're gonna hit this little town called Nashua. Used to be a town, now it's part of Kansas City, Missouri. And north of Nashua is a radio station. It's very stereotype looking radio station. I can't remember what the American Graffiti radio station looked like. I think it was sort of like this Art Deco streamlined modern building. And that's what this building looks like. It's got the rounded corners. It's got the radio towers in the back, and it may have been used as a radio station at one time, I think, but a long time ago. As long as I could remember, it was it's not an empty building, but it's a building used to, I believe, house transmitters. And in this case, I believe it houses repeater transmitters. And that's what the radio towers are behind it, are repeaters, not... I don't know how to explain a repeater. I have to look it up again. I did look it up before. And then Nashua has like this little tiny downtown area, a couple of buildings that look like, almost like out of the Old West. And this drive is very beautiful. I know it's beautiful in the spring, but it's very beautiful in the fall as well. Oh, and another town that we'll hit is the town of Farrellview. I almost worked in Farrellview. I applied for a job as a... What was it? It's a place that stitches corporate logos and things. Not embroiders, but had this kind of like stitching machine. And at the time I had taken a lot of drafting and graphics classes in school. And I was in between being in school and being out of school. I probably should have gone for the job, but it was up in Farrellview. I remember it was like this little company, and they had a machine that would stitch your company logo like on the back of your coveralls or something. And the job essentially was to take a drawing or rendering of the company logo and to use a what was it called back then? It wasn't called a mouse. And this was 1985. It was called a something else. It's something that a device that sort of preceded a mouse, and it was like a mouse. And what you do is you would pick points and trace the logo, and that would tell the machine, okay, this is the area you're going to stitch, and then you would tell it, what color thread or whatever, and it would do it automatically. Well, I'm sure you had to put the article in the machine. It probably could have been a good job, but I was really, really determined to get back into college. I have an illustrious college career. I spent way too much time enjoying it, I guess. And that was up here in this little tiny town called Farrellview, and there isn't much in Farrellview. It's got a trailer park and a tiny, tiny little downtown area. It's right next to the airport, and that's why I think we're up by the Kansas City International Airport. And all this area up here is like businesses that sort of cater to airport stuff, like meeting halls, business buildings, convention centers, hotels, motels, a few restaurants, and there's a couple of there's Meritus Health, and there's a couple of what do you call them, hair saloons, fingernail places. I'm not too macho to say that there's a place up here we like to go to get a little pampered, where they do manicure and pedicure, and it's actually a good thing to do. Even men should do it, because our toenails can really lead to problems if we don't take care of them. And this building says IAAP. I thought it said IOOP. I was going to say Yoop, but it's actually YAP. And this is sort of a meandering outer road. It'll take us, I think, up by... Let me put my navigation on so I can see the roads a little better on the... And yeah, the buses come up here. There seems to be a lot of medical things up here. And there's a lot of warehouse type buildings. I can see directly ahead a building that says Hilton on it, of course. It seems when you come to Kansas City and you come to the airport, a lot of people just be like, get me a hotel, motel right off the airport, and then I'll visit the city. But to me, I think I would want to get away from the airport, especially the Kansas City airport is like way, way out. It's like, 15, 20 minutes away from downtown, which I guess isn't that far out, but, it's far enough. I think that we get a lot of crazy traffic up here, so I don't know. Our friend at the car rental place, and they sort of centralized everything at the airport. The car rental agencies all work out of one central located hub, and most of them do. I think there's one or two that don't. And he was in charge of, watching over. Is this my street? I don't know. I may overshoot my street here. No, I don't think so, because we're still south of 435. But he used to watch be the security. And one time, nice place, Missouri. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's not the best time of year around here. It's kind of grim and gray with the leaves off the trees. But man, you should see it in springtime here. It's beautiful. A sad story about my friend and his job there was he one night there, all the rent-a-car places were having a party, and they had all this leftover food there, and and he was very conscientious. He always showed up like an hour early. I thought he was ridiculous for doing that, and a lot of people seem to like him, but there's always a nasty person or two. So Ken thought it was all right to go help himself to some of the leftovers, and apparently they played back the security footage and complained to his boss and got him fired off of that job. He didn't get fired from the company, he just got fired from that job. But eventually he left the company because, a lot of jobs like that, they don't have your back. What was it? Was it that? I think maybe, here's the Expo Center. They do a lot of gun shows up here. Boy. I think part of the problem was he was working for a small company, and the small company went kaput. And it seems like they really weren't actually gunning for him. They were trying to get rid of the company, and they were using any excuse. And unfortunately, that's just ridiculous. It doesn't matter if a person works for your company or not. If you have a spread like that. Oh, over here is interesting to the left. This building right behind the bus now. There's a little plaque. I can see it from here, but you can't. And that's the Bonnie and Clyde shootout site. Bonnie and Clyde, and who was it? Their brother-in-law and his wife found a little roadside inn. It's one of those places where you park your car in a garage and there's an attached motel room. And local law enforcement heard they were here, and they were definitely very wanted, so they rounded up as many people as they could find, and not very quietly showed up and had a big shootout where law enforcement were killed, and one of the members of the gang was killed. And it's a scene in the movie, if you've ever seen the movie from the early 70s, where I can't remember his name and I can't remember her name, but the wife got shot in the eye and she lost her eye from the whole thing. And she lived to an old age. Here's Farrellview, a very small town. I was coming up the hill one time on an icy day in basically a Ford Pinto, and it was a rear-wheel drive, tiny little car, no traction whatsoever, and lost control of it, ended up in the ditch, and had to go to the gas station, walk to the gas station, call my dad, and wait for him to get off work and come and help pull me out of the ditch. And it was I think it was this slight hill right here, and the road was just really, really icy at the time. And we are on, was it J.P. Cookingham? Is that the name? I have to look at a road sign when we pass by it. But it's named after the city manager. He was never a mayor. He was city manager of Kansas City. And in 1964, the city was getting very, very poor because all the housing stock in town was owned by landlords or was getting abandoned or whatever. Here's a neat old gas station here. It says North Cookingham. I think it's LP Cookingham. Anyway, so in order to increase their tax base, they annexed a lot of land, everything north of the river pretty much. That's why you have Kansas City North, which is part of Kansas City, but it just means Kansas City north of the river. And all this land, all this rural land is part of Kansas City, Missouri. Though this was done in 1964, and it's still rural land. And it goes far north of here, I think up to 435. Well, we're north of 435 just slightly. I think it just goes a little bit north of here. And the idea was they were going to annex all the land so the city could grow, and then they could tap into the suburbs that were developing up here and increase their tax base so that the city wouldn't end up as a bankrupt hole like Detroit has become and other cities you could name. I think St. Louis is one of those cities that has that problem because they are a very landlocked city. They can't grow anymore. And I don't know how people would feel about that. I've sort of like, Some complaints of Northlanders are adequate services, has used the wealth that's generated up here to tax people because Kansas City is one of those cities that takes 1% of your salary every year and just sends it to the city general fund, the general slush fund, we like to call it. And then there's that, and then there's really no sidewalks up here. A lot of places still don't have sidewalks after 40, 50 years now. There's still a lot of places don't have sidewalks. A lot of places don't have adequate lighting. There's a lot of places up here, even in the city, they don't have access to sewer systems, so they're like plugged into their own septic, which, I'm sure that's probably decreased a lot. But you still find a house, there's a couple of houses where, you don't have city sewer. The city hasn't managed to, in 50 years, hasn't managed to figure out how to get the sewer to your house. So you have to maintain your own septic system. Which, that's very rural. Speaking of my dad, I mentioned earlier, I helped him put in a septic tank at a farmhouse we owned, and so I know how difficult it is to run a septic system. I believe we're still in Platte County. Maybe we've crossed over into Clay County. And we just crossed over into Clay County. Platte County was part of what was called the Platte Purchase. Missouri, when it became a state, originally didn't have, look at that hawk up there. The state line ran straight north from the Missouri River, and the other part was like territory, considered part of the Kansas-Nebraska territory, I guess. And then they had the Platte Purchase, and I don't know who purchased it and from who they bought it. It's just, I have to look up the history on it. But they bought everything west of the line to the Missouri River. That way, Missouri now has a state line that runs north-south, and then when it hits the Missouri River, it follows the river to the northwest and kind of has a funny bend to it on the western part of the state. Maybe it was purchased from the Native Americans who were in this area, but, most probably not. If it was a purchase, it was probably a purchase in name only, like, hey, we're going to buy this from you. How's free sound? Free or die. Sounds like a deal you cannot refuse. There's a lot of those deals made in the 1800s, people. Oh yeah, here's our military, and we're ready to burn you out of your house unless you agree to our terms. That's fair, isn't it? We'll give you nothing, and we'll let you live. And left, it's this kind of streamlined, modern, you can't really see it very well, Art Deco looking building. The windows are all blocked in. I imagine at one time you look at it and had glass block windows, but if you leave an empty building with glass in the front, you won't have glass very long. It's just the way people are. Now we're in Nashua, and you see like this old, kind of like Old West sort of downtown looking area. It's really neat. These are all now apartment buildings. And we are on the Jefferson Highway. I forgot to plug that in this talk. Jefferson Highway went from 1916 to 1926. Back in the days when the federal government absolutely didn't want to have anything to do with it. Didn't even bother with roads. If you had a road, it was because the county or because the neighbors maintained it. Literally, you and your neighbors had to maintain your own roads. A lot of farmers, in order to be able to get things to market, had to make sure that they turned the muddy tracks into something that could be used in all weather. And the Jefferson Highway, the auto trail associations came along and said, this country really needs to invest in roads for the purposes of defense and commerce. This is a neat corner here. It's like this Conoco gas station. Is it Conoco? BP. Not a big fan of BP. And so they private associations with rich vested interests like automobile companies like the Jefferson Highway. Jefferson Highway was started by Meredith Corporation, who, Meredith if you've ever seen a Better Homes and Gardens, and they run a bunch of TV and I think some radio stations all over the country too. They are the owners of KCTV here in Kansas City, Channel 5, which is a CBS affiliate. And they were big in the Jefferson Highway, and the Jefferson Highway ran from Winnipeg all the way down to New Orleans, from north to south or south to north. And the slogan was Pine to Palm, an all-weather route you could travel and see all of the middle of the country. And it passed right through Kansas City and St. Joseph. It actually splits into two branches. It comes together, in Kansas City, but it splits north, comes together, and then it goes through Kansas City, and then it splits in Kansas City and heads east. One branch heads east, one branch heads west. The east branch goes through Missouri, the west branch goes through Kansas, and then the east branch meets up, I think, with the Ozark Trail down in, don't quote me on that one, down in Carthage, Missouri, and then it heads west until Vinita, Oklahoma, and the two branches of the highway come together there, and that's, they come together in Miami, Oklahoma, but that whole area is now Route 66. And, in the American Civil War, the Civil War battle that was fought here, the big one was the one that finally kicked the pro-slave forces out of Missouri, finally, was the Battle of Westport. And they called it the Gettysburg of the West. Because after that battle, it was like the Western Confederacy just kind of melted. The only thing that was really left was some stuff in Texas, and the Native Americans the civilized tribes, they called them, who were in Oklahoma, who had been relocated to Oklahoma. And they had fought their own kind of mini civil war, because some were pro-north, some were pro-south. And unfortunately, the pro-south forces won and kind of took Oklahoma. And then they were the last holdouts of the Civil War. They're the last two battles. One was fought in Texas after the armistice, after the General Lee's surrender, and one was fought in Oklahoma. And the very last battle was actually fought in the ocean. News traveled not very fast, and so there was this Confederate commerce raider, a ship that was sent out to raid and destroy Union shipping and take what they can from the Union ships. And it was still doing it like months after the Civil War had ended. And I think people said, "Hey, don't you know the war is over? What are you fighting for?" "Oh yeah, who won?" The good guys. "Oh, darn tootin', we knew that would happen. Yoo-hoo, the South." I'm like, no, the good guys, us. Who's us? U.S., us. Travel America's Backroads is where you'll find us. And speaking of which, I need to get gas. And here's the Trip Quick right here, handy dandy and convenient. A big new one. They're all big and new. So I'm going to get some gas and then finish my trip. So please stand by. I am back. That didn't take very long. I'm very habitual about this. I keep track of mileage and gas and how much I put in and how much it costs. Gallons. 15.3. This is so interesting. Cost. $31.58. I remember not too long ago when gas was so expensive, it cost you almost $100 just to fill a regular sized tank. Miles per gallon, I skip for now. Ooh. I have to adapt these books to fit my... Oh, this is what I look at the trip odometer. 289.4. That's how I can figure out how much, do my math. And you hate driving your car. You buy a car, you spend a lot of money on it, and you get it with as low miles as you can. I don't ever buy brand new. That's just a waste of money. And then you drive it every day to work and trips and everything, and you put miles on it really, really fast. Hopefully we bought a car that's supposed to be very reliable. 9600 North Oak, otherwise known as the Jefferson Highway, in a former date and time. And front. Ooh, the sun is going down behind Trip Quick here. Trip Quick is getting backlit. Right now my kiddos are coming home from school. Found out that one of the kiddos got into a tussle at school and has a bruises and a scraped lip and everything else, and the school was concerned that we were going to be upset, and we're like, well, no, it doesn't sound like he was the bully. That's what would upset us. No. I guess lesson learned. Got to console the poor kid that he got in a fight at school and ended up on the receiving end of it. But it's better that than we have an issue with a kid who's a bully. Now, some people will say, oh, no, I'd rather my kid stand up for himself. And I think, well, yeah. It's true, but not be bullies. That's not acceptable. Never. And we got a whole bunch of those in this country now. And what comes to that kind of bullying? Everybody loses their freedom. The whole idea behind countries and governments and everything is that a lot of services that we have, and one of the main services is, we never think of it as a service. Which way is this guy going? Come on. It'd really help if you use your blinkers. He made a right turn. Couldn't tell if he was going right or going straight. Anyway, so one of the biggest services that governments provide, essentially civilization itself. And part of civilized behavior is you don't do things to disrespect or hurt other people. But if you do that, then we have laws, and supposedly that's what our police are there for. And however, way too often our police are used to enforce laws that benefit the plutocrats in our country and don't really help anybody else. And that's a bad thing to say about police, but in too many cases that's true. Now, I will say there was a time we had to call the police, and they were big. Kansas City police, I gave my props to them. They were a big help for us when we needed them. They diffused the situation, and they were really good and kind, and actually provided counseling service, of all things. But yeah, civilization is one of the benefits. It's why we live in societies. And societies have governing powers so that we can regulate our societies. Because, if it wasn't for, it's what I tell people who believe that they stand for anarchy, which the definition of anarchy is peaceful coexistence through mutual cooperation. And I said, yeah, that's a great theory. It's a great dream. I wish we could achieve it. But you know what destroys anarchy? Is there's always that one person who won't mutually cooperate, who can't be responsible for themselves, and everybody else has to take care of them. Either they have to make sure that they're sequestered away from people that they're trying to harm. That's why when society breaks down and one group of people decides they absolutely can't live with anybody else, and then they got to take up arms. Now we've got to deal with something, where our own personal safety, and forget about wealth. The only people who get wealthy off that are the criminals. Forget about security, forget about anything. You got to pay some strong man to be your security. Or you could live in the fictional dream that you'll be the strong man, some sort of superhero, and you'll be able to take care of it yourself. Right. What brings down one strong man is two strong men or women. And no matter how strong or able you are, you're always going to be somebody else around who's going to outnumber you and uncivilize you. And do we really want to go there? No. That's why we have created a government that we hope will have as light a footprint as humanly possible in our lives. Now, there are right-wing conservatives say they're trying to preserve that, but I don't know if you've ever noticed, but they preserve it for corporations and wealthy people and things like that, when it's you and I. Oh my God, some of the worst laws on the books are conservative morality laws. They got to interfere with every little thing in our lives. And then, on the other side, the lefties, you go into your house and you go, I want to paint my house blue. And you start painting your house, and somebody walks up to you and says, hey, you need to stop that because that's against the law. And you're like, what law says I can't paint my house whatever color I want? Well, we got all these laws, and you got to maintain a blah, 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 blah. And, pretty soon you're not talking about liberalism or freedom. You're talking about pretty much the opposite of it. So I always say, I'm going to repeat it again. I'll repeat it again and again and again. There is absolutely no difference between ideologues of either other. They're going to interfere with if they get too carried away, they interfere with your daily life. As far as you and I are concerned, there's no difference. No sense in joining. No sense in saying I'm a liberal or I'm a conservative. Those are just boxes that we like to put people in. They don't really exist. You take a hardcore liberal and you take a hardcore conservative and you erase the polarity and you have the exact same person. The same thought processes, the same reaction to situations, the same militancy or not, the same black and white ideas of good and evil. You and I, we live in the real world. We don't live in this fantasy world where it's all like knights in shining armor defending against the evil, whatever. No, it's not like that. It's day-to-day life. It's taking care of our kids. It's making sure our kids are educated and brought up as best we can, that they grow up to be moral people who can take care of themselves, who can take care of their own happiness. And it's not about, we can't stand those people over there, so we're going to get our bullets ready. You know, maybe we should cordon off a part of the country where, you know, we can call it Civil War land and say, yeah, you want to shoot each other? Go ahead. Hunger Games. We'll all watch. We'll bet on it. No, we don't want to have gladiator crap. But we don't want these swinging dicks to come out into society and destroy everything that everybody's worked hard to build. Just because... That's because some group with foreign influence and funding is going around saying that certain people are, what is it? Having child sex slave rings, and they are draining the blood of children so that they could drink it or something. What? You know, I'm going to change the name of QAnon. The Q stands for Quisling. You know what a Quisling is? It's a good definition. A person who coordinates and cooperates with the enemy. A traitor, the fifth columnist. And there is a world conflict forming right now between superpowers. Wannabe superpowers and maybe has-been superpowers and new superpowers. I hope that the United States is not a has-been, not in my lifetime. But, you know, I was saying earlier, I was saying it this morning, we give ground to China like we've been doing. I don't mean economically. I mean like, you know, I have a point of reference to the Philippines. My wife is Filipino. And I am observing that the Philippines are doing a lot of building projects. There's a lot of potential in that country. It's a crossroads of the world. Highly educated, motivated, hardworking people. And you know, they live in a part of the world where a lot of trade passes through. And they have really horrible infrastructure because, you know, back in the 50s and 60s, with the United States backing, we supported a horrible dictator in that country. As long as we had our military bases, we were fine. Our military bases and our Philippine prostitutes, we were fine. We don't care about anything. That's all we care to invest. And Americans at the time were looked at as the good guys. You know, MacArthur and everything else like that. And he came back. We took the Philippines back from the Japanese who raped and murdered everybody. But since that time, since we lost interest in places like the Philippines, their infrastructure has never been what it should have been. They don't have any major highways. They don't have major rail structure, and they need that stuff. Well, guess who's coming in to build it for them? You guessed it, the Chinese. So that's how we are fighting a war in the Southern Pacific right now. And we're losing because Americans are like, we're isolationists. We don't care. That's our business. We have starving people in the United States we have to take care of. Yeah, we have starving people in the United States we have to take care of because we have all these damn racists in this country. Again, I repeat myself a lot. So yeah, we need to go into places like the Philippines. We need to go into the third world countries that have, waterborne illnesses are some of the number one killers of humans in the world. The United States should take the lead on that and provide clean water in places that don't have it. Provide care for children and education. That stuff does work. And that's what makes Americans heroes all over the world. That's what made us a freaking superpower to begin with. Not that we fought wars and won them. That we were always generous and helpful. And we cared about our fellow human beings. We're empathetic. Dollars spent on that are a great investment. The best investment we could ever think of for our country. Better investment than sinking tons of money in our military, which is most of it is waste anyway. Anyways, I'm here, I'm queer, get used to it, so I gotta end this here. You can't even see, sun's in my face.